Leaders across the world are reacting today after the public spat between US President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy in Washington yesterday. Now, the hope was for the US and Ukraine to sign a new security deal, but Zelenskyy was reportedly asked to leave the White House after the altercation, leaving us wondering what comes next as Russia's war in Ukraine stretches now into its fourth year. To help us make sense of it all, we have Charles Kupchan, Senior Fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations, joining us now. Charles, appreciate you taking the time.
Good to be with you.
You know, that was an uncomfortable watch for many of us yesterday, seeing Zelenskyy, Trump, and the US Vice President all speaking over each other, arguing publicly, the US leaders telling Zelenskyy to thank them. You've seen plenty of Oval Office photo ops, I imagine. What did you make of what we saw last night?
I would say uncomfortable is putting it mildly. I found it shocking. I have been in Oval Office meetings where some strong words are passed, but it's behind closed doors. I've never seen this kind of public display of anger. Vance and Trump dressed down President Zelenskyy, the leader of a democratic Ukraine that's fighting for its survival. I think that basically what happened is that Zelenskyy got under Trump's skin. He didn't seem to be sufficiently grateful. He talked back at times, and President Trump lost it. And he went after President Zelenskyy, and then he kicked him out of the White House. This kind of display of anger, I think, is not just inappropriate, but it's very harmful because it undercuts the Ukrainian president just as he needs leverage to try to negotiate a good peace deal with Russia.
In fact, let's talk about that deal, because this most recent escalation, it comes on the back of Trump engaging directly with Putin, holding those high-level talks, both their representatives, about the fate of Ukraine without Ukraine at the table. And that's something that Zelenskyy has objected to, and Trump has then been angry about that. What do we know about this peace deal, the so-called peace deal that Trump wants Ukraine to sign on to?
Well, I actually think it was a good thing that Trump called Putin and that U.S. diplomats met with Russian diplomats in Saudi Arabia. There needs to be a U.S.-Russia dialogue if we're going to end this war, in part because Putin is attracted by the prospect of a working relationship with the United States. That'll help convince him to stop killing Ukrainians. The problem is that we're not going to get a peace deal that Ukraine can live with, that leaves the 80% of Ukraine whole, free, independent, unless the United States stands by Ukraine. And so right now, we just don't know what comes next. I see two potential options. One is that Trump more or less throws Ukraine under the bus. Ukraine has to sue for peace, and Russia gets a deal that it's very much to its liking. The alternative is that Trump and Zelenskyy find a way to repair their relationship. Trump gets behind Ukraine, continues to provide military and economic assistance, and then Ukraine gets a good deal because it has the leverage that it needs. Right now, I worry that it's going to be the former, a deal that favors Russia, simply because as of yesterday at that meeting, Trump showed little concern about Ukraine's future.
In fact, we saw Russia's foreign minister putting out a statement essentially echoing Trump, saying Zelenskyy is not ready for peace, and that's something Trump said following the meeting as well. In fact, we're increasingly seeing the US president repeat ideas that so far we'd only heard before from Putin and from his administration, things like, Zelenskyy is a dictator. How do you see this playing out? Are we looking at some sort of a new world order? I mean, you did say there are two options here, where the US can go back and repair their relationship with Ukraine, even following that disastrous encounter yesterday. But if not, if we continue on the track that we've seen ever since Trump has been in office, at least in his second term, how do you see this playing out?
Well, this mess over Ukraine is part of a broader realignment of American grand strategy. Trump clearly feels that the post-World War II order, American security alliances in all quarters of the globe, don't work for the United States. He wants to get out there and strike deals with everybody, including Russia, China, Iran, North Korea. It's a very transactional approach. And as a consequence, we just don't know whether NATO, the transatlantic partnership, is going to survive. Europeans right now are melting down. They have to contemplate life without the American protector. I don't think we're going to end up there, because I do think that even Trump will understand that the United States needs democratic partners, whether it's Canada, France, Germany, Japan. But right now, that we're just, I would say, in an inflection point. And Trump could prove to be the transactional president who can strike good deals. He could also end up being the demolition man, who simply takes a wrecking ball to the world that America made and destroys it. Right now, too soon to tell.
This weekend, we're seeing Zelenskyy meeting with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. We also now know that Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is attending the European Defence Summit in the UK. That wasn't, the plan earlier. It seems like European leadership and maybe even Canadian leadership is more important now than ever. In your opinion, how can and how should they respond to this? Because we've also seen that Trump doesn't respond well, to any sort of strong statements, anyone trying to hold him accountable.
Well, I think for now, while Trump is still formulating his way forward, the right thing to do is to negotiate with the guy, roll up the sleeves and sit down and try to be transactional in return. And that means when it comes to the transatlantic relationship, to do more. So I think countries like Canada, countries like Germany, Italy, they should increase defense spending. They should say to Mr. Trump, we will be a better partner, we will shoulder more burdens, but we need to be in this game together. We need to stand shoulder to shoulder. If Ukraine is going to get a good deal, if Ukraine is going to survive as an independent democratic state, they need our support. I think these are critical weeks and months when the future of the transatlantic relationship is at stake. And I would encourage America's partners, even if they don't like Trump, they don't like what he's doing, to try to stay in the game.
It does seem like it might take them giving Trump something for him to come around to their way of thinking. Just a final question. At any rate, do we expect at this stage, as we enter the fourth year of the war in Ukraine, that Ukraine might have to give up territory?
Well, I think that it's pretty clear that when this war comes to an end, the 20% of Ukraine that is occupied by Russian forces will remain occupied by Russian forces. Hard for me to imagine an outcome in which Russia agrees to withdraw. I think the key question is not territory, but what is the status of that 80% of Ukraine that is still free? Will it be defensible? Will it have the economic and military wherewithal it needs to defend itself? Will it be on a path to membership in the European Union? Or, in the worst case scenario, will it remain a pawn of Russia? I think right now we just don't know. But what I think Trump needs to do is to make sure that he gives Ukraine the backing that it needs to emerge from this war, the 80% of Ukraine that is still free, as a success story. That, to me, has to be our new definition of an acceptable outcome to this conflict.
All right, so some crucial meetings then in the days ahead that might give us a sense of how that plays out. Charles, we leave it there. That is Charles Kupchan of the Council on Foreign Relations. Thanks, Charles.